Hey, John Sonmez from simpleprogrammer.com, and I am making another video here while slumming it. Need a shave and got kind of crazy hair going on here, but I'm recording from my iPad mini again. I was actually going through my email, and it occurred to me that I could probably kill two birds with one stone. I could get a good video out of answering an email and just answer the email via video. So that's what I'm doing, and that probably will actually be a good format for some of these videos because I do get a lot of questions via email, and a lot of the questions are similar questions. So perhaps I can answer some of those with a YouTube video, and then in the future send a link to that YouTube video to answer that question. So yeah, I'm not sure why I didn't think of that earlier, but here's the video, or the question is essentially, it's about my business, about the structuring of it. Once you went off on your own, did you start to file quarterly? Is Simple Programmer an LLC, and do you pay yourself as an employee? Or do you have some kind of other tax withholding strategy for the income you collect? So basically, well, before I answer this, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to probably give medical advice in this video, but yeah, I think it's important to make that disclaimer that whatever advice I am giving, legal advice, I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not giving any kind of advice besides just telling you how that I do things, and it's a totally unprofessional opinion. I'm a software developer and business owner, not a lawyer. So just wanted to make sure I give that disclaimer before I get into this. So basically, the way I have my business structured is I have an LLC, Simple Programmer LLC. Now that LLC is, it files as an S Corp. So by default, if you create an LLC in the US, basically what happens is that it's a pass-through entity. So the income that you make from the business is just like your own personal income. It's like you're doing business as. Now the problem with that is that if you make a certain amount of income, you're going to pay self-employment tax, which is going to be high. When you have a regular job, a W-2 job with an employer, what ends up happening is they end up paying a good portion of your employment tax, right? So, or unemployment tax. Basically, what they would have to pay, you have to pay if you're self-employed. But there's a way to reduce that burden some, which is to basically make your LLC act as if it is its own entity. It basically becomes its own entity. It has, for tax purposes, it has its own tax ID number, and you basically file its own tax return. So that's when you file an LLC as an S Corp, and that's what I'm doing in this case. Now, like I said, the reason for this is because it reduces that self-employment tax burden that I would have to pay. You get basically excessive tax for being self-employed, but you can reduce that if you become an employee of your own company. So I'm an actual employee of Simple Programmer LLC, and I pay myself a salary, right? And then the rest of the money is taken as profit from the company as an investment. So that's how that works. Now my accountant kind of advised on this and helped me get this set up, and one of the goals that I had with this was making this as simple as possible. I don't want to run payroll every month. I don't want to do quarterly estimate taxes and all of that stuff that I'm, quote, supposed to do, right? So I basically talked to my accountant and said, okay, well, how does this work? How do the penalties work? And when I heard it all, I came up with an idea, which she agreed to, so I'm assuming that it is legitimate, which is basically, instead of doing this quarterly taxes, instead of doing payroll, I'm going to pay my quarterly estimates only at the fourth quarter of the year and pay myself at that exact same time, only one paycheck. So basically what ends up happening, well, let me tell you what most people do. They file quarterly taxes estimates, for Q1, Q2, 3, and 4 throughout the year, and then they pay like a monthly payroll or weekly payroll, bi-weekly payroll, however they do it, and pay themselves, and then do the withholdings and everything on that. Instead of doing that, what I found was that you don't get a penalty for not making your quarterly estimates as long as by the time that you file that fourth quarter estimate, that you're caught up for what you should be for the year. So the other thing I found is that you don't have to pay yourself, on any frequency. You can just be once a year if you want. So I combine the two, and at Q4 of every year, I basically pay myself my entire salary, and I withhold almost the entire amount. So I basically get a check for pennies, and that withholding goes to pay the quarterly, to catch up as if I had paid the quarterlies on time throughout the year. I'd rather not have the government holding my money any longer than they need to. So it also simplifies things greatly because they only have to do that one thing. And as far as I understand, this is all legitimate. It makes sense. It's a little bit weird, but it works for me. It makes things really simple for me. So that's basically what I do. So to answer the question, no, I don't really pay quarterly. I pay them all at once. I file 000 for Q1, Q2, Q3, and then for Q4, I basically catch up all the way, and then I pay myself one big paycheck at that time. So I think I answered all the questions there. As far as the withholding, I basically know how much I'm going to end up paying at that time, so I kind of set aside money and make sure I have money available at that time, and then I basically pay big checks to the IRS. I'd rather not have them hold my money. I try to hold as much as possible. I'd rather write a big check, because in my mind, I don't understand like this whole, oh, you didn't withhold enough and you had to pay a bigger, instead of getting a refund, you had to pay to the IRS. Well, anytime that you get a refund, you basically are getting ripped off because you didn't get to utilize that money and you didn't get interest on it. So I'd rather pay the IRS every time. If I pay the IRS, that means I did good. That means that I utilized my money fully and had its full capability. I didn't lend it to the government ahead of time. So hopefully that answers your question. If you have any questions around the business, definitely ask them. You can send me an email at john@simpleprogrammer.com, or you can comment on this video if you have any more questions about this. That's how I run my business. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer, not a legal professional, not any of those things. Just a guy with an accountant who is trying to make things simple. So if you want to do anything like this, make sure you run it by your accountant. I have found that some accountants and tax professionals tend to make things more complicated than they need to be, and charge you a lot of money to fill out forms that you can pretty much do on your own for like $50. So I'd get second opinions for sure. I've heard conflicting advice, but yeah, you're kind of on your own there. But like I said, as long as you get second opinions and do some research yourself, then you should be in good shape. Doesn't hurt to help, or it doesn't hurt to ask other business owners as well what they're doing. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate that. And like I said, if you have any questions, shoot me an email, send a comment, and I'll talk to you again next time. Take care.